Hello. So recently I was putting together some materials for a presentation that I'm doing on change management. This is for the Valley Industrial Association out in the western suburbs. It's on May 6th. We'll put more information in the notes of the post about that event. But as I was doing, I thought, I really haven't discussed change management with my audience here, and thought, this could be a useful longer post for people that I would say professionals that are in projects and haven't really received formal change management training, or it's been a while and you want a little bit of a refresh, or maybe you want some other tools. So I'm going to put together here a little bit longer post so that you can learn a few things. And if you don't have time, realize that you can actually save. There's a little save button in the ellipses in the corner of the post that will allow you to come back to it later. So that's just the setup here, but let me get into the stuff. The first thing to note is, or when I teach change management, what I want people to understand is the issue is, especially if you're a project manager trying to implement something, the organization has some inertia. And oftentimes the activity of implementation is changing that inertia. And so you're fighting against this organizational need to maintain what is, okay? And we have kind of this, stereotype of kind of a stodgy person that's been doing the same thing the same way their whole career and blah, blah, blah. And as much as, I suppose that stereotype might hold sometimes, the reality is we all, even those who practice change management, we all have embedded in us the desire to maintain because there's a fear of the uncertainty, right? I often tell people, we will prefer or cling to a known problem, right? Because it's comfortable and known, than the discomfort that comes with uncertainty of a future change or something different. And so I always want to put that out there first, because I think that context helps the person leading the change, leading the program, one, to maybe empathize a little bit with the folks that they're trying to get to change, but two, understand the underlying issues that they have to overcome in order to get their change implemented. So I wanted to start there, and then this deck that I have is really for a broader purpose, but nonetheless, I wanted to give some value to my LinkedIn listeners. So the tool that I use most often, and actually I've found other folks that I've worked with still use this tool as well. And I want to say it was taught to us going through one of our black belt programs in my corporate career, and it's called the 10 Dimensions of Change, and it just gives 10 different aspects, considerations that a change leader, a project manager, a program leader needs to consider and potentially have specific actions around in order to ensure the change goes well. And so I'll kind of read them briefly here, but I'm going to dive into a few. I don't want this to be too long. I'll dive into a few that I think are most critical. So just to go through it quickly: key stakeholders, communications, training, culture, process, organization, metrics, IT systems and tools, knowledge management, incentive systems, right? That's actually kind of a lot. And those are big topics. To do change properly, you should think about each one. And in practice, those of us who are taught this, what we would typically do is create a spreadsheet, and we would have a column for the 10 dimensions, and we'd have actions for each, and owners, and so on and so forth, so we can make sure that we are doing something in each spot. So that's the broad overview of one tool that you would use in change management. I just want to dive into specifics. And it was interesting. I was talking with someone recently, and he's making some big changes within his organization and implementing some Lean and Six Sigma concepts. And he said, Matt, the best tool, the most powerful tool is this stakeholder mapping. And it was just a good reminder of how important knowing who the different stakeholders are, recognizing up and down the organizational hierarchy, they're going to be different stakeholders, and they're going to be wanting different things, and they have different power and decision making, and they have different needs that need to be met. And actually, if you go look online, there's different ways that you can do stakeholder mapping, and I would encourage you to kind of look through and figure out one that is best for you. At the end of the day, the purpose is to make sure you know who are the decision makers, who are the people that are most influential, and then start to think about what communications, and that's the next piece, that you need to do for each, right? And I do think when I'm doing a change, I think in this order. I typically think of stakeholders first. Now, I will absolutely have a case for change that I've developed before I get to the point of thinking about communications and stakeholders. Though that case for change is going to help me determine what are those communications that I need to do, and how do I vary those communications depending on the stakeholder group. An executive that, let's say, is definitely a beneficiary of this change, that's going to be a lot easier. That's going to be more statusing and that kind of thing, communication. Maybe there's an executive that has some friction or some challenges or some concerns about the change. That's going to be a different set of communications. Those are going to be communications that help identify what's in it for them and reinforce that, right? Could also be stakeholders are also the folks that are most impacted at the change. Could be frontline employees, could be the customer. And so again, that's where I'm going to think about the what's in it for them and how I communicate what's going on and how this is going to benefit and those sorts of things. And if there are any points of friction, making sure that I'm transparent about them first. Second, giving some sense of how we're mitigating or managing those frictions. And then, the probably the biggest piece beyond knowing those targets and how you're targeting your communication, at the point that you understand who you're targeting and how you're targeting the communication to them, then it's about frequency and making sure that there's a good repetition routine to the communications that you're doing. And that keeps everybody feeling like they're a part of this, feeling that they have some say, some agency in what's going on, and you get feedback, which can help the change as well, because there will be course corrections that occur. That's the stakeholder piece. That's the communications piece. And then there's obviously more training, culture. Culture. We talk about culture in this very nebulous way. When I think about culture, I look at what are the norms. Are we the kind of company that holds lots of meetings? Are we the kind of company, organization that does PowerPoint slides? Different kinds of norms. And there's deeper norms than that too. But that's a more mechanical, tactical, tangible way that you can think about culture. So I try to take culture down into something really tangible, again, because I want to identify actions that address that. So culture, the process, the organization, metrics. How will I know that in the end that something has really changed, that something's improved? There needs to be a feedback mechanism in the form of some kind of metrics. Systems and tools, knowledge management. Oh my gosh, this one's so important. I see too often where organizations just go through and they make the change and then they run off to the next thing. No. There's a retrospective here. There's knowledge that has been gained through the change. And by the way, people a year, 2 years, 3 years may go back and go, hey, why did we do this? There should be some documentation, a presentation, something that tells us what we went through, what were the drivers, and so on and so forth. That is part of the organizational knowledge. We don't want to lose that. Make sure that it gets documented. And then incentive systems, right? Those might be part of the what's in it for me as you're building out your communications plans. So too much for me to go through in a short LinkedIn post. But if you're interested in this, let me know in the notes, because a few things. One is I will be delivering a discussion on change management at the Valley Industrial Association in May. Also, this is part of our Black Belt program, so happy if you wanted to learn more about that. And I would add, I can do more. I can add content around here if this kind of content is interesting to you. I just need your feedback and I need to hear it. So put your thoughts in the notes of this post, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.